Hi there. Welcome to A Creative Affair, a collection of conversations exploring creativity through the art of photography and so many other creative passions. I am Len, a lifelong professional educator. The first place I really discovered my love for teaching was at Chicola in the Kangaroo Valley, just a couple of hours south of Sydney in Australia. I was straight out of school. It was my first real job. It was the first time I paid any attention to the act of teaching, learning, and facilitation. I fell into education so easily, it took over my life. In fact, I started failing art school a couple of years later because education was so important to me. Besides all the fun stuff I got to teach, like rock climbing and cliff rescue canoeing, caving, high ropes courses, I also loved teaching leadership, teamwork, and interpersonal skills. Do you know, it's been a lifelong love. Teaching is a creative act, dreaming up ways to teach and to help people learn. It's a passion I've managed to keep alive and fresh my whole life.
That's beautiful. That's a lot of things to do, Len.
It is, isn't it? It's so exciting.
Yes, it's adventuresome. Well, I'm Brie. I am a photographer, a nature lover, a hiker, a mom, so many other things, but I'm also a coach for creatives and a scuba diver. Yep, I'm scuba certified, and I've been diving in Spain, Mexico, and Hawaii, and I'm hoping to go to so many other places in the future. So I actually was a little scared to do it. My husband convinced me to do the training and to be his buddy. And actually, for the first few times, and I was just trying not to die. I especially remember going in Spain and the Mediterranean was so cold because it was not the right season. And I really struggled on that dive. But now I'm more comfortable with it, and I can just relax and go enjoy this underwater world where I get to witness a new place, right? The underwater is so different than the land. It's really amazing. And I'm finding that experiences like that shake me out of my comfort zone and inspire me in new ways. And that's why I say yes to those kinds of things. I'm like, okay, I'm a little scared of that, but I will try it anyway. So, and I think that goes right along with today's topic is keeping our creative romance alive. We could talk about fears in a little bit. So, Len, how do you keep your creative romance alive?
Well, your little story, your introductory story there nails something for me personally too, that exploring and trying new experiences, experimenting and taking risks in things outside of my creative endeavours that I pursue relentlessly, they keep me inspired. This being fresh and trying these things, like what you're talking about with coming to ease with the underwater world, learning to go through that experience of fear, overcoming it, and then obviously getting obsessed by the gorgeous beauty of the underwater world, and then once you settle in that, it becomes an incredibly inspiring place for you. And not that you're racing to take your camera underwater, but I think that stirring up those emotions in us regularly, and imagine everything that's going on, or revisit them for you, Brie, in that experience of overcoming your fear and settling into it, and then now absolutely loving and enjoying that motivates you to keep doing that as a process, and finding that in your art. Now, am I onto something there, Brie?
Yeah, well, I was just thinking, and this is kind of what we do in this conversation, is we have new ideas, which is part of like being creative. And I was just thinking, I haven't gone scuba diving since I really have been digging into all of my work with my photography. And I'm wondering how that, like, now I'm thinking about my experiences and how that could possibly influence my work. And also what the next time I go, the art that I'm doing now, and all of the different ways I'm learning how to see the world, and because of what I'm doing, how that will also influence how I see this underwater world too. And so I think like that it keeps moving like that. We have new ideas that move us forward to do something new, and then we have more new ideas that influence other parts of our lives. And I think that's really like super interesting. Can I just go backwards for a little bit? We're actually not numbering these episodes for a specific reason, because we really are hoping that they're standalone episodes that you can, that our listeners can just pull one out and listen to it as you feel inspired to do, and you can listen to them in any order. It doesn't matter, because they're going to be published in a certain order, but you don't have to listen to them in any order. But the last episode that we recorded was about creative blocks. And I just wanted to like review that really fast for anyone who hasn't listened to it. And I will, you can either go backwards in whatever podcast app you're listening in, or I'll put it in the show notes, and you can just click on that if you'd like to listen. If you'd like to listen to that one as well. But we talked about creative blocks. How do we know we're experiencing a creative block? Some things that cause them, and then also some ways that, like briefly, some ways we can get out of them. So you can go backwards and kind of listen to that. But we talked a little bit about limiting beliefs, right? And some external reasons, and just some of the ways that that our thoughts or our emotions or things that are happening in our world can really affect us, in a creative way. And this episode is to really expand on that and say, and tap into, how do we really do that? We understand we're having a creative block, or even if you're not creating a block, how do you keep that creativity moving you forward, like propelled forward? I don't know. Does that sound right? Maybe maybe I could reword that in a different way, but so that's what we want to talk about, is keeping our creativity flowing, whether we're feeling blocked or whether we're not. So for either way. So I just wanted to reference that. Go ahead.
The reference is how to keep our creative romance alive, how to keep going, or if leaving our blocks behind. This episode we're really concentrating on what we can do to keep going, or to maybe even to find it, or even understand that it comes in waves and comes and goes. That's a fantastic thing. And isn't it beautiful that we don't number our episodes? Because that's what creativity is like, isn't it? We jump all over the place, and we don't need to do everything in a specific order. I love that you can just dive in, search through and go, oh, that one sounds interesting. I'm going to go and listen to that. So
I want to learn about goals. I want to listen about goals. Let's do that.
Yeah, when you're ready, it jumps out to you from the page, doesn't it? It's very much about the right lesson appears at the right moment for us. And
what I actually love doing is listening to things, just listening to them on the surface. This is so not what we had written down, but I love listening to I love just going through and doing a once over listen, kind of like a book, and then going back and like really doing a deep dive into a specific topic, so that I have kind of an overview of what maybe a book, or even, even a podcast. If there's a podcast episode I'm really interested in, I'll listen to it once over to have the understanding, and then I'll really dive back in to do some real learning. And so we're hoping that that's what it's like for our listeners, that these will be conversations you can do that with. And then you can also take these and have other conversations with other people. So, which we always encourage people to do. So,
yes, and to follow our creativity.
Right. And so one of the things that we talked about, just to kind of, hit the tail end of those creative blocks, one of the things that we talked about, if you're having a creative block, is really just allowing it to allowing yourself to not even feel like you're creative at the moment. And that is actually one way I believe that we keep our creativity like alive, and our connection with creativity is just saying, it's just allowing that space for ourselves to say, I don't really feel creative at this moment. And then not having the judgment, but knowing that, knowing it's going to come back, or that it will just flow back to you, which is what you talked about in waves. And I have written down here, like, stop avoiding. Like, you don't want to avoid the confrontation with yourself, like that says, I think sometimes we avoid thinking that we're not being creative, right? Mm. And you just listen. You just listen to what your mind has to say about what's happening for you. And this, I even wrote down here, have a conversation with it. You can literally talk out loud to your mind and have this conversation. Hey, what's going on? How come we're not feeling so creative? Right? And just watch yourself, really get in touch with what is going on for you. And you don't want to reason with it. You just want to hear what's happening and listen to it, allow it to be there. And then the magic is when you do that and you hear it, you'll just move on. I really believe, I have this really firm belief that once we listen to what our brain is trying to tell us and kind of give it that space to say what it needs to, then it'll just kind of disappear a little bit, and we'll be able to move on and to be in the creative space that we want to. So,
well, sometimes when we do have that conversation, the answer comes out that we actually have to go and do something about it.
Yes.
We might be stuck on something, or we're thinking about something obsessively, or there's a to-do list that we need to go and fix. There's a bill that we need to pay, or that email that we need to write. And I've been stuck on those for days creatively, and in that bottom of that wave. And fascinatingly, the moment I actually addressed it, as you're saying, actually reason with it and deal with it, the moment I wrote that email and sent it off, or actually cleaned that thing out of my life and sorted it out, the creativity rushed back into me in a floodgate. absolute flood of a passionate moment, and I can date and timestamp those moments, and they just come in. And one way of thinking about it is I'm preparing myself for that moment, and I actually need that downtime as well. But I think allowing it, understanding that it comes and goes, is very much part of that process, isn't it, Brie? That it's not on all the time, and for it to be on the time, we have to stay in that zone and somewhat isolated from the rest of our lives, and that's probably quite impossible. Well, it is for me, and maybe I shouldn't talk for other people. So I allow myself to, and that's why I call it a wave, come in and out of these creative moments in my life.
I find that when I am being creative, and creative can look, I just want to shout out to one of our listeners, Jeannie. She messaged me and we just had this lovely, she messaged us and we had this lovely conversation about what it means to be creative, and are we actually creating something? And Jeannie, what I messaged back and said, it's a mindset. This is a way of being, right? And if we really believe that we are creative people doing creative things, if we believe that that's our way of being, we don't have to actually be doing it all the time, right? It's just who we are, and we can tap into it at any time that we want or need to, right? And that is what this conversation is about. How do we keep that alive so that we can tap into it whenever we want to? And I want to go back to what you were saying, Len, that this is kind of being a creative person is a holistic, we can't separate our art from our regular other personal life, like our relationships or our finances, or any maybe we have regular jobs and we're not photographers, right? And so, or professionals or whatever. So all of those things combined and are combined into who we are. I don't separate out all of those things. I don't separate my person into separate categories. It's just all of it is who I am. And when we find that we want to create, but are maybe we're not able to do it when we're not able to access it right away, maybe there's a cause, some sort of other life cause. And so back to you, what you said, Len, is there's something that maybe we need to address, like a bill.
We all hate those. We all hate them.
Or even I just want to say it could even be something that we've created for ourselves. I remember wanting to write a blog post, and I procrastinated it, and no one created this for me except myself. No one, right? So, but I had thoughts about myself and about my own writing, and about that I wasn't setting aside time or wasn't doing it when I put aside the time, and all of those thoughts were actually just keeping me from being creative. And then sometimes when I would go and go to edit an image, I'm touching my computer. I'm touchy, so I'm touching my computer. That's where they're stored. I would go to edit an image, and I would judge myself. Oh, I can't do this right now because I'm supposed to write this blog post, even though I'm the one that created it for myself. And I guess my point is we do this, some of the things we do to ourselves. And if I would have just said, who cares if I write the blog post, or sat down and write the blog post, and then that would free my brain up to do the image, or I could say, who cares? I'm just going to write my blog post. I'm just going to do my image, and then I can do my blog post whenever I want. Those kinds of things too.
So not doing the image and working on the blog post might have been the block that you were thinking about because you had an idea about that image that you really needed to attend to right that moment. And you need, I need, and I'd imagine you might be like this too, but I really don't know, Brie, but I have to have a totally clear head to write, as I do to create, and I have to be able to follow these inspirations at that time. And procrastinating is an important part of the process when it's not in an unhealthy manner. When it's a healthy pause and you're ruminating and thinking about things and letting them sit still for a period of time so that our subconscious can work on it. I'm a really great believer that we have our consciousness and our subconsciousness working on things in cahoots together. And so much also happens while we sleep or while we're doing other things. So while you were processing that photo, your subconscious might have been working on the article that you needed to write. You might have even been doing it consciously. Yeah. You might have even been going through the words and still playing with little sentences or little ideas in your mind as you're doing something that you can do that's quite comfortable and enjoyable, that maybe isn't as confronting. You may have also chosen to go down the path of working on your photo because it's going to be an enjoyable and rewarding experience before you tackle something that maybe is a little bit harder.
And a little uncomfortable because I partially have a belief. Yes, I partially have a belief that I'm actually trying to work my way around, I'm trying to coach myself because I think that belief is not serving me in a way that it's not really helping me. And so my belief is that I'm not a good writer. And if I sit down to edit an image, then I'm like, well, of course I'm going to edit an image. That's way more fun than doing writing because I'm not a good writer, right? And so I would say it doesn't matter what kind of art you practice. I really think these kinds of all of these things kind of creep in to our minds. And I really love some of the things you said, Len. I'm gonna have to go play this back for myself when I'm going to write, just to see if I'm going to tap into myself next time I do that, because I'm like, well, I have things to say and I want to write a blog post, but at the same time, it's kind of uncomfortable. So what is that? What is it trying to say for me? So anyway, but
I have to share something here with you and our listeners that I also struggle with writing. I have a very strong mental block about not being good at English, not being good at spelling. I failed English at high school virtually. My English marks held me back. They stopped me going from certain schools. And I'm absolutely flabbergasted to think that I've actually written a master's degree thesis and written a book and have written hundreds of articles on creativity and photography to get through this block and actually figure out that I could actually write. And I still put that wall up today. And for me to actually write an article, a forward of something, an email even, I actually have to have a totally clear palette, a clear plate. It has to have no aftertaste in there. There has to be a clear mental state so I can put that considerable amount of energy that it takes me to work in that thing, because I've got this big block about that I can't do it. And no matter how much I dismantle it and prove it to myself, do you know, Brie, it still lingers there. And I'm embarrassed to say that it still lingers there, but it is. And I can't believe that I've actually even been managed to do those things in my life. And the next article I write, it will be another big week where I have to create space and think about it for a long period of time and put that aside to actually make it happen. So this is something we should talk about this one day, about writing, because it's a creative act. And as is living and speaking and daydreaming and writing music or working on our photos, they're all different types of creative acts.
For sure.
And it sounds like we're both living through a similar experience of trying to overcome a limiting belief that we have about ourselves.
Right. All the writers out there are going, I can't believe this. No, I can't believe it takes them so long. Yeah, I
was going to say it's really fascinating that some of the books on creativity and getting through writer's block and remaining creative are actually written by writers. That's absolutely amazing. The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron is one that comes straight to mind in that absolute classic book on being an artist, maintaining a creative life, written by an author that's written many, many wonderful books. Fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
I've heard of the book, but I haven't read it, and so I'm going to put that on my list. So thank you for sharing that. I'll put a link to that book in the show notes. I don't know where I'll link to. We don't. Maybe Amazon. We don't earn any money from that or any of this. So.
While we're on that book, and one of the points that we've been talking, we're planning on talking about in this episode, is walking, and that book is 30 years old. She's recently written a book about the artist's way for retirees, and I grabbed it off the shelf and dragged it home. And, she'd added a new chapter from taking all her ideas, and her new chapter was about walking.
Fabulous. For retirees, huh?
Yeah, and it's on our list today for things that we can do to keep the passion alive, to keep the romance alive, to keep our romance flowing, is the act of walking. And Julia talks about it in later versions of what she's been discussing. Why is walking important for you, Brie?
Well, I find that I love hiking and being out in nature and just like clearing my head. In fact, my husband walks all the time. It's kind of like an evening ritual. And I think it helps him decompress and just kind of clear his mind from the day. And I find that too. And I really like going out just to think and to... I feel like when I'm walking, I have all these thoughts that are running around in my mind, and the walking somehow helps me sift through them and put some of those ones that aren't important kind of aside, and that leaves space for new ones to come in. And so I actually found... My friend messaged me. She's like, do you know walking boosts your creativity? And I said, what? So I don't actually know any of the science behind this. And I'll link to an article in the show notes about this. So I have a little quote from, from a link that has the article. And it says this study, so there's a study about walking and creativity, found that walking indoors or outdoors, it doesn't actually matter. It's just the actual walking. So it found that walking indoors or outdoors similarly boosted creative inspiration. The act of walking itself and not the environment was the main factor. Across the board, creativity levels were consistently at significantly higher for those walking compared to those sitting. Okay, all you landscape photographers that say you need the nature, amen. We're all there. All of us are with you on that. Like, there is something about the nature and the fresh air. But part of it is this: the act of the walking was the main factor. So we'll have to go back and actually do the science, but I imagine it's the blood moving. Maybe it's the oxygen levels. If somebody is like a scientist and knows exactly how this works, please let me know.
Well,
it's obviously healthy for us, right?
I first discovered there was something special with walking. In my part of my career, I was an adventure therapist, and I worked with in the outdoors, using the outdoor medium as a way of counselling and therapy with disadvantaged youth. And I used to work with victims of of fires who'd suffered from burns. I worked with kids with medical disabilities and helping them to overcome them, and also ones with psychological problems. Anyway, I discovered, and it's common knowledge, I didn't understand this, but when I was walking with someone and talking, that these kids opened up to me. That while they were walking, there was a part of their brain is engaged with the act of walking. So a part of our brain gets switched over on concentrating, and there's so many things involved in it, isn't there? Sight, we've got to look ahead, and we have to remember where our steps are going to be as we're walking. And make sure we've got a clear path. We have to keep our muscles. We use thousands or hundreds of muscles just in every step. There's breathing. There's moving our body, keeping our balance, and we get into this beautiful rhythm and breathing. And while we're in that state, because that part of our brain is engaged, it takes away some of our filters. And these children and teenagers opened up to me, and you could have the most fascinating and beautiful conversations while they were actually walking. And that was the first time I realised that the walking did something other than just physical exercise, that it was indeed related to brain function. And allowed me to think about things so much more clearly and to sort things out. I use walking as my own form of counselling today. So if I have a stressful problem, I go out and walk it out. And sometimes I combine it with a phone call to somebody to talk it out at the same time. And I find it so effective. That's my number one go-to fix things, is go for a walk. Absolutely magical. So I find that just going for a walk when I'm in a good mood and in a creative mood, I come back full of fresh ideas.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, so it can work in so many ways. So maybe that's our number one go-do.
Go for a walk.
Like, if we had to say there's one, if you want to, keep creativity going, just go on walks like that. I don't know. For me, that would be actually one of my number ones. I mean,
yeah.
Besides looking into why you're maybe feeling like you have a creative block, or why, what the whys of your brain. But I can figure those out while I'm walking. Like, I really do a lot of self-coaching while I'm walking. You do, it's all the same, right? So,
self-talk.
Yeah.
It's a place to sort out the self-talk.
For sure. We also wrote down here, we have play. So we've done a whole episode on play. So I don't know if we need to go into that more, but for sure, going out and just playing, being free and experimenting and having fun with whatever you're doing, whatever art. Maybe you're a writer and you just write weird all kinds of words in I don't know how you would play as a writer. Maybe I need to look into that, because if I don't think I'm a good writer, maybe I just need to play with it more.
One of my favorite ways to play doesn't actually involve any physicalness whatsoever. It actually involves shutting my eyes and allowing myself to play in my mind, and to fantasize and to imagine things and to explore where my mind can take me. And I find that an incredibly beautiful and very healthy, playful act. And just to explore almost that, it's not a dream space, because I'm awake and it's I'm fully conscious, but I allow my mind to wander freely and have a play.
And if you combine that with walking, ooh, that's a magical combination, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And I think that's one of the beautiful things about walking, isn't it? Is that our because of that function that I was talking about that engages part of our mind, we do have more playful and more perhaps honest thoughts, and ones that are more closely linked to our intuition, and our unconscious self, our higher selves, perhaps, depending on how you want to word that. It's a connection.
I think it would be actually really fascinating to know how that all works between our physiological state and our neurological state, and how those all connect to make that happen. The one thing I do know is that it does work. So another one is sleep. And I think when I know, I think when we're not getting, I'm going to add, we don't have this on here, but I'm going to add like our food, like our health. When we're not, like, obviously if we're sick, probably not feeling creative, right? But like if there's something affecting our health, we might not be as creative, or something like we can actually do for ourselves, right? But sleep, if I personally function so much better when I have the sleep, and otherwise my mind gets tired faster. And I have noticed that I need like all hands on deck when when I want to be in a really creative space, right? I'm like, okay, I need all of my energy, because I really think the act of being creative is also physiological. Like it takes all of my body and my brain. And I used to have, so I studied music in college, and I had this flute teacher who would say, if you are not sweating while you are practicing, you're not doing it right. And so, and maybe that's not necessarily being creative, but the whole, I mean, in music, we are creating phrasing, and we're thinking about how to do so many different things. It's so different than actually photography, but yet it's not. But I loved coming away from my practice sessions feeling tired, but also like I just had this big creative session with myself. And there's no way I can perform on that level if I'm really tired. Do you have different opinions, Len?
No, I'm actually totally in agreement. Like always, I think we agree on all these things, despite our incredibly diverse backgrounds and where we're coming from. That picking up when you're talking about sweating and working hard while you're actually in that creative mode, I find that when I am being highly creative, I am working my ass off, and I'm working really, really hard. As a photographer, when I press the shutter, I'm actually tensing all my muscles and holding the camera still, perfectly still, and I hold my breath out of my body, and I hold my breath for every time I press the shutter, and it's actually an incredibly physical thing. But I think it's a big but. On top of that, I'm exhausted afterwards. I'm absolutely shattered from being in that creative mode. And it doesn't matter whether I'm sitting at my computer writing or working on artworks, whether I'm printing them out, making scarves or greeting cards or whatever it is that I'm physically making, or wandering through the bush. It's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting. And sleep is a very important part of it. Though there is an alternative view on this, and I think it's important to mention that there is a lovely little creative edge when you're a little bit tired and stressed and a little bit exhausted. And I've found this throughout my life, that those moments when... I'm just going to backpedal one little bit here. When I am a little bit tired and stressed, I'm actually have discovered that I'm more sensitive to things. And I become hypersensitive, hyper aware of things going on around me. And honestly, I find I actually teach a lot better in that state because I'm super, super sensitive to the needs of others. Now, whether that's a creative thing or not, I'm going to have to put my thinking cap on that. But in the art of teaching, I've actually found that to be not something that I ever want to put myself into. And the moments that I've actually accidentally ended up in that situation, I've found that I have been just having that lovely little mix of just being on edge enough to be quite helpful in the creative act.
This just shows that just because we say get sleep or be a little tired doesn't mean that this is like across the board, right? And so for everyone, it's going to obviously look different because we're all unique individuals, right? Mm-hmm. And we've said this before too, that all of this, you can't do all of it, but these are just things you can try. Maybe you are a little tired and see what happens. Maybe you do go on more walks and see what happens, and keep that passion for your creativity flowing, right? So, you have one more thing, Len?
I want to reinforce that there is no roadmap to being a creative. There isn't you do this and you suddenly are going to become more creative. I firmly believe that we have to figure out what works for us individually, and figuring out how we work as a creative. The more time you spend figuring out how you work, and then adapting your life to enhance that and actually celebrate it and make that happen, the more effective you can be as being a creative. So it's a matter of self-understanding and not searching for one answer. And I think Brie and I both agree on this, that by giving you and discussing together all these different options that we're hoping to broaden the palette, what could possibly that you could do, and offer suggestions. And it's a matter of trying things and going, that one works, that one doesn't, this one's me, that one isn't me, and this picture of who you are slowly unfolds. And so much of this is in the mind. It's becoming comfortable with who we are and the way that we love to work, isn't it?
Yeah, and really listening to ourselves and what resonates with us too. So, yes, amen to all of that. So some other things you can do. I actually think it's fun to shake things up. To put myself in new surroundings. Obviously, I talked about scuba diving, but like even whatever your art is, you can do it in a new place. You can go to a new place. You can put yourself in new surroundings. If you're a chef, you can go to a different kitchen. Whatever it is, you can put yourself in new surroundings, and that maybe will give you also new ideas, but kind of a fresh way to look at things. I actually love, as a photographer, I love going solo, being solo in the environment, but I also love going with people because I get to see how they work and their way of looking at things. And maybe I'm like, oh, that's a way I've never thought of before. And so, and then I get to look at myself and think, maybe I want to try it that way. Maybe I don't, but it is an option for the future. So those kinds of things, maybe, do your art with some people, maybe collaborate with someone like Len and I are doing here, right? Like you can have groups, right? You can have groups of people that get together and are doing all our creative things together. I'm thinking, I mean, obviously we're photographers, but I'm thinking like workshops.
That's what having being someone who runs workshops all the time and tours in creatives turn up to go to a new place with someone that knows about it, but also to be immersed with other creatives at the same time, and to let that spirit of cooperation and maybe it's even a little bit of competition for some swell up and actually be part of that. And they use that as a way to be creative. So they book in by actually going on holidays or on tours or workshops or trips, times in their life to set aside to be creative. It's one of the foremost reasons why people come and do those particular things.
Well, I remember taking a watercolor class, maybe 7 years ago.
Watercolors are my favorite painting medium.
Me too, but I don't really know how to do them. I just wanted to try something new. I really did. And it was fascinating being with a group of other people. So I was trying something new, and I was also with a group of other people who were so many different skill levels combined with an instructor. And that was a really fascinating place to be, to hear the conversation and see and even just witness what everyone else was doing. And so that kind of work is really also very interesting to me. One of the things, so my husband is actually, was in marketing. That's a long story. You don't want to hear that. But one of the things he talks about, he calls it idea storming. Well, he calls it question storming, but it's really like having so many more ideas than you actually think you need. Like if you're trying to puzzle something out and figure something out creatively, because sometimes we just want to be creative in general, and sometimes we actually want to solve something and like have an idea for something that we can't piece together kind of how it goes, right? And so one idea is to generate more ideas than you actually think you need and be absurd. That's what he says. So shout out to my husband. He says, be totally absurd. The most absurd things, you just come up with them, and then you can kind of weed them out, because chances are you just come up with as many as you can in the most absurd ways, and you may come up with something really amazing. So I have a quote here. It says, people who are able to generate a lot of ideas, good and not so good, and we get to be the deciders on what that looks like, are much more likely to have a couple of brilliant ideas hidden in the mix than those who only come up with a couple of ideas to begin with. So let's not limit ourselves, right? Block out time for free writing, or thinking, because we don't want to write, right, Lynn? We just want to think.
We put that in our avoidance list.
Yeah, for sure. Right. So block out time for free writing and come up with as many ideas around a problem as your brain can generate, even if they seem silly. Since creative people are prolific idea generators, amen, yes, we are, remember that we typically have more misses than hits. So it doesn't matter. You just come up with so many ideas, and chances are you're going to find something in there that is like, oh my gosh, I never in a million years would have thought that if I hadn't have been just brainstorming all these different ideas. Have you had any experience with that, Len?
Lots. And I have to agree with it wholeheartedly. And I believe in this so much. We have so many ideas that are dead ends. We have some that we have and they sit there and we never come back to them. This concept that we need more than we actually, we'd have to generate more. We have to have more ideas than we actually are capable of bringing into place is absolutely huge. And I think we could spend hours on this as an idea by itself, because you're exactly right. That quote is exactly right, that you need lots of them to pick out the good ones. We're cherry picking out the best ones to actually bring into fruition. And how do we know whether they're any good? Is by actually starting them, trialing them, experimenting. It's very much about play, isn't it, in here as well? The more that we have of them, the easier it is to keep motivated and to keep working on them. Like there's always another one to dive back into because it's just sitting there, and there's always more coming. I think that as you get into practice of generating them, they keep flowing and then they keep coming out.
Yeah, it is about, so. And this is one of the things that we also put on our list was keep doing it, right? And that is, I think that goes along with having all of these new ideas, some that we do, some that we don't. And I don't think we need to put any pressure on ourselves that we need to do any of the ideas that we think up. Just having them actually keeps our brains going. So, and then that combined with just keep doing our art, right? I think sometimes we just have to keep doing it. You know, like I actually schedule time because I figure with life, sometimes our regular lives get in the way. And unless I just decide and schedule some time that I'm going to go walk or I'm going to visit a new park or whatever it is, that I actually won't go out and do it. So that is how I personally keep myself doing my work. I also leave myself open to serendipity. Like, that's not a problem. And I love that part. It's my favorite. But I also like putting myself in situations where I can go and be creative on purpose. Like I'm going to go do this. And so whatever it is that you do, you can totally figure out how to schedule time for yourself to keep yourself moving in in your creative direction.
You also need to figure out a method to record all these ideas, don't you? Mm-hmm. And to keep a track of them. And the tried and true one, and Julia Cameron talks about this in her book, The Artist's Way, as well, is journaling. Actually writing them down. And it actually started as a creative habit when I was a teenager. I used to buy actually my favourite photographer's Peter Dombrovskis diary. And each day had a blank square in it. And it was quite a large blank square, and 1 week was spread over a double page. And I started actually making ideas in there and creating records of what I was doing and thoughts, collecting quotes, cutting out photographs and sticking them in there. This is before the internet. it became this visual diary. And then slowly that morphed into a blank book. And now I actually spend a great deal of time selecting my visual diaries. And I have a whole shelf of them. Actually, I'm on my second shelf now, and they keep going. They have drawings in them. They have thought ideas. They have. I write down my dreams. It's a journal. It's a place to whinge to. It's a private place to explore, and in there, there's way more ideas than I can possibly ever fit into my lifetime. And part of that process is sorting through, and it's fascinating. The act of writing doesn't mean I need to actually go back and read it again. And this is absolutely fascinating. People think that when we're journaling, it's something about going back and keeping that record so you can read it years later or weeks later. No, for me, it's actually a place to sort them out and to clarify them and to see which ones have legs. And, the good ones, Brie, they surface up out of there, out of my memory, without me going back and rereading, and I work on them. And, of course, there's the ones that aren't any good too that don't make it back out of there. And I think that's part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, I like to doodle and take notes and stuff like that. And I just think that there's something about writing it down. It's the act of actually physically doing that puts it on our brains and imprints it on our brains. And there is some science behind that. And then our minds, and then we can recall it. The ones that are really important, our brains will actually recall for us when I feel like it will recall it for me when it's time. And so I think that's really an interesting phenomenon. So, so write down all your crazy ideas and things that you're working on, right? And do the journaling for sure. That keeps your creativity going too.
Oh, definitely does.
Okay, one that sounds counterintuitive is just to be bored. Legitimately. And I am going to add it because I had on this too, fast from technology for a day. And I feel like I would kind of be bored if I didn't have my phone. And so, for sure, I've lived without my phone for a whole day. But if we can put ourselves, and I think this is in a Steal Like an Artist, isn't it? The Be Bored.
Oh, I can't remember actually, to be honest.
Yeah, Austin Kleon's book, Steal Like an Artist. I think he talks about being bored, and that is actually a really amazing way to foster, to continue to foster creativity, is just to allow ourselves to actually do nothing, because our brains always want to be doing something. So when we actually say, no, we're not going to do anything, our brain will find new things to do. Right. And so, and maybe that's part of I wouldn't say meditation is boring, but I would say being bored is kind of like clearing your mind. So maybe meditation has a space in there a little bit too, that we're opening up a space for, where we're not actually doing anything, where we're not actually maybe we're not walking, maybe we're not on purpose thinking anything, and we're just allowing creative ideas to come in, to flow into us.
I'm going to have to add that to my list, Brie, because I was thinking about being bored as taking a break or quitting for a while or letting something be fallow while it heals, rather than actually intentionally setting out to be bored. So I'm going to give that one a go and see what it happens. I think when I close my eyes and I allow myself to play in my mind, that I might end up in quite a similar state as
possibly.
But I also struggle with my phone and this new
Who
media
doesn't? Come on.
and social media and all those sort of things, and putting it down or turning it off for a period of time and learning to live without it is actually been an incredibly healthy step in regaining some of that space back in my life for creativity.
Yeah.
Bored.
I
I'm going to
think,
put that on my list, Brie.
yes, do it. See, we're still learning. We're still learning from each other. Yes, I think I need to have a regular phone fast. My husband cannot listen to this, so because then he'll hold me to it. But let's go back to what you were talking about is the quitting part, and we're not actually talking about quitting. We're just actually talking about stopping what you're doing, and I think this is totally a way to keep our creativity going is by not doing it. And that sounds really strange. Do you want to explain how you think that works, Len? Because I have some ideas too.
Well, you need space to resolve things. One of the articles I've written talks about how time is one of the great answerers when we have these questions, particularly about aesthetics, which is something us creatives are totally obsessed with, aesthetics. We need time to find that answer. We have to sit with things. And I find that when I give my work a huge amounts of time, my feelings and emotions change and shift with it. So by giving a break, time away, letting things sit, quitting, and then picking them back up at a later date, magic has happened in the meantime. And I find that this happens so consistently in my life, that magic happens when I give things time, that the answers become obvious, and my feelings emerge really clearly with them. Just as a really practical example, Brie, I print my photograph out, and I've got a board here in my studio, and I sit it on the board, and I just leave it there. And I don't decide I've got to finish that tomorrow. No, I just sit it there and I walk past it over and over for months. And sometimes I go up and I've made my mind up, and I suddenly pick the artwork up and I rip it up and throw it away. Other times I walk over to it and I'll suddenly sign it and emboss it and say it's finished. And then there were the other times where I go, oh, that just needs this. And I'll go back and that's when I'll rip up that one as well, and make an adjustment and print it out again, and then sign it and emboss it. So
there you go.
These feelings for my own work change and shift. It's like my body and my mind has to catch up with the artwork. If my intuition and my inner self has a big part in making it, and I believe that it's quite a fair bit ahead of our conscious selves, we need a bit of time for our rational thinking, conscious part of ourselves to catch up with that new thinking, that new way of communicating, that new artwork, that new creative act that time gives us. So I've reframed that to giving things time. Let them lay fallow for a while. Let them see how you feel about them over a period of time, and then come back to them. And that's where we started today, about talking, for me, that's about waves. Waves of intense creativity, and a wave of quietude. And in that time, I'm doing other things. So living a full creative life doesn't mean that my waves of enthusiasm and energy
wane,
just come for life. Some of them are, my enthusiasm for walking one week might be higher, and my enthusiasm for being out and taking photographs might be lower that week. And then I might have a burst of writing, and that's a different week. So they're not all in sync, and I'm not suddenly bored with my life, or everything stops. I'm riding different waves of what is actually interesting, and learning to become an artist has honestly been a journey of learning to follow my feelings about and how things are going. And often the answer just comes from your feelings. Oh, today I should be doing this. And how many of us actually have time in our lives to follow what we should be doing today? I think that's an incredible blessing that I have in my life, where I can sometimes, not all the times, but I can follow my feelings on things.
But, even with all of us living all of our, regular non-professional photographer lives, we can have those moments where we think, oh, I should do that. I need to act on that, and then go act on that, because I think that's telling our creative brains, yes, thank you so much. This is the intuition that I'm having, and I'm giving into this, and I'm allowing myself, the space and time to do that. And so I think it is sometimes can be really important to fit that in. And in addition to this, when we're talking about like quitting or kind of letting it lay low, I think it's kind of like, it could be kind of like fasting, where we put it aside and kind of let the energy and the desire to be creative build until we absolutely
love it. What a beautiful
this is a
metaphor.
Creative affair, right?
It's gorgeous.
But letting this desire build until we can't stand it anymore, and we absolutely have to do it, and not just kind of doing it halfway, but really then allowing ourselves to go full force into it, right? And so sometimes that could be a way just saying, you know what, I'm not going to do any this week and see what happens. Like, and maybe that passion for it will actually build on itself. I don't know.
By doing that, when it comes back with that much force, you know it's right, don't you?
Yeah.
When you have to do something, that's that moment of pure bliss and excitement that it's right for you, and that's the one that you have to follow. Absolutely, yes. Brie. And fasting is a lovely, because when we're fasting, our body's healing. Right. It's so building up energy.
Sometimes we just need a rest and let it build back up. So let's do one last one.
Oh, which one are we going to do, Brie? Have you got your eye on one there?
Oh, yeah. You can't take my last one.
Somehow I knew that was going to be your answer. Is that why that last one is in bold letters too, I bet?
Well, this is, we already the last one actually on our list is keep doing it. But the one I want to say is do something weird. Come on, go crazy, really go do some weird stuff. Go create something just super weird. Throw stuff together you would have never done before. Try something you're never going to try. You never thought you would try before. And this is partly the play. But I have here, whatever you do to get unstuck or re-inspired, why not exercise a little imagination, have a little fun, and risk being weird. Just be weird. I just love that. So many times people think creatives are these weird people, and we kind of are. I've always thought of myself as a weird person, and I love that. I love being strange, love being different, and I just want to live into that and just surprise people with some weird stuff. This is my new weird stuff. I'm just trying that out. I'm going to see how that works. And, but I think it can be refreshing too, just to kind of take the risk and not care what anyone thinks. And here's what I'm going to say. This does not have to be in your regular art. like seriously, go like take a video of yourself doing something weird. Like go like
take a drawing class.
Yeah, like, no, I don't know, is that weird? Your brain will think of what's weird, but maybe nothing pertaining to your own art. Go do some weird stuff. I don't swear. Len does. You can say it. But I just think that's fun, and it keeps me feeling fresh and like reinvigorated, just to like surprise people and just like do some weird things. I've had it before. Like, Brie, you are so weird. Yeah, I am. And I love it. It's so fun. Sorry if that was that.
It's been a lifelong goal to be eccentric, Brie, and unique. Something that I strive for, and I get upset with myself when I find that I'm actually so similar to everybody else in some ways, and it is such a special thing. And being weird and doing things out on the edge, it's almost like our scuba diving where we started again today. Mm-hmm. These new experiences, they change us, and they help things happen. I've mentioned this in a previous episode, but I'm going to mention it again. I put down my art as a visual artist, as a photographer, for a 7 to 10 year period in my life. And I was still creative because I was a teacher in that time. And when I picked it back up, I immediately was doing better art than when I put it down. And something magical was actually happening at that same time, that the time that I wasn't doing things and I was doing some of those other weird things. I went and lived in another country for 3 years. I taught people how to teach in a different language, like experiences. I went to all these different places in the world, and one day I picked up my camera and I couldn't put it down again. So when I picked it up after that break, I knew that that was my direction. And so I think I was healing in a lot of that time, and I had to go and experiment and see what was doing. So there's so many of these points that we're talking about actually illustrated with real life examples in both of our lives. And hopefully that's what we can do through this podcast, is to share those anecdotal stories that illustrate these points that we know work so well. Not only having experienced it for ourselves, but luckily, because we both work with people, with our clients, and we actually get to see what works for one person and what doesn't work for someone else and what works for them. And that's what builds up such a rich repertoire of ideas on how to keep the romance alive.
Agreed. Well, I have a quick question before we finish up, and that is, if you try any of these things, what is the worst thing that could happen? And if you tried them, what's the best thing that could happen? So if you want to keep that romance alive, you can think about these things, like, just by trying them, is there a downside to any of it? And really, what could be the best outcome from just trying some of them? So, yeah.
Wonderful. I think some of us, as that suffer a little bit of anxiety or depression, what's the worst thing that could happen? Nothing. If we're talking about an artwork and making something creative, if we reframe that as it becomes another beautiful learning experience, and it's one of the thousands of ideas that we have to have that doesn't work, then the best thing that could happen is that we find the one that is going to work for us. and is going to be really special. And I don't actually have to ask that question. What is the best thing that could happen? I know that by being experimental, and I have to concentrate on making sure I'm taking the risks, because I know that when the reward comes, it's going to be good. And that's something that I'm blessed with, because I've been doing this creative life for my whole life. So for me, that's my little issue, Brie, that you've nailed there. What's the worst thing that could happen? Well,
how did I know?
I could find out the best thing that could possibly happen.
True.
Very
I like
much
that.
true.
I like it.
Well, Brie, what another inspiring conversation. I feel so inspired. I love sharing this with our listeners and with you. It's so much fun in catching up together and recording these, and I hope our enthusiasm and the joy that we both share in making them actually comes across to others, and hopefully these become helpful learning experiences for people. And remember what we said today, just drop into them randomly, and whatever captures your attention, follow it rather than trying to search for logic in it, because you might just stumble into the one little idea that is the inspiration for you. So we love to finish on a few questions. So how do you keep the romance alive? And I think we've only just scratching the surface here. This is a subject that we're going to return to in different guises, and probably under little specialty areas throughout our future programs. So we encourage you to tell us what keeps your romance alive, because we missed so much, and we're really fascinated to find out what it is that works for you. So please tell us. And why don't you write to us and tell us? What a wonderful thing to do. So you can do that by emailing us at create@acreativeaffairpodcast.com. And we also encourage you to take up and continue this conversation with other creatives, whatever that creative endeavour shall be. Now, Brie, I'm not a professional photographer.
Are you
That's
sure?
a label I push over there. I'm not even a professional artist, because I don't make money out of my art. I'm actually a professional teacher, and I'm a professional art teacher specifically, and I'm in the business of personal development for creatives.
True.
Do you know, my whole life didn't come together until I combined these two great loves, a love of art, a love of photography, and a love of teaching. And that was over 20 years ago when I started Lens School. My first real break is when I had dreamt up, and teaching is such a creative passion, when I dreamt up one particular class called my master class. It was so successful that the graduates of the first year, it was a year-long course in photography and creativity. It was so successful that the first 6 people told all their friends, and the next year I had about 20 students, and I could retire. So I retired from a job in vocational education in the government, and I became a full-time teacher at Lens School. And so combining my passions together led me to a life that I have today. And teaching creativity gives me freedom to be totally creative for myself. And that's something we should talk about another time. But that's my secret, is that I make money doing what I love, and I have creative freedom to produce whatever it is that I do. Well,
I know. It's beautiful. And I've been kind of the same situation, or not a situation, but I feel the same about my life, that all the things that I've done in my life up until now have led to this, led to me being personally really satisfied with what I'm doing. And as I'm doing all kinds of things, but specifically as a coach for creatives, which I love, is one of my passions. I love helping people. And I actually take a holistic approach to helping my clients. In myself too. I self-coach myself, and I also do this for my clients. I help my clients achieve their dreams for their art, their businesses, and even their personal lives. So you can go to www.creativemindscoach.com. You could sign up for a discovery call, and let's chat. I can actually help you make a plan to unlock your potential and achieve your creative dreams. It's a fabulous way to live. So before we go, we just want to say, Len and I, that we've appreciated all who have reached out and engaged with us and shared our conversations with other creatives. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And as always, links to all the things that we talked about are in the show notes today. And you can go to, as Len said, acreativeaffairpodcast.com, and you can subscribe. You can sign up for our newsletter, and you can see all of our episodes there. So that's it. Len, I know you'll be keeping the romance alive in your own art. We've been wanting to do this one for a while. Right? So until next time, bye.
Goodbye.